you think that Harris and Waltz can seal the deal, and do you think that they will?
I look, if I were betting at Ladbrokes or something where it's 50-50, I wouldn't make a bet because they would take a tax on the bet and it wouldn't be worth the tax. I think it's about as close as you can get to 50-50. And also Americans have to get used to the fact that it's going to be close probably on election day too. You're going to have to get used to the fact that you're going to wake up on November 5th not knowing who's going to win, and you might wake up on November 6th still not knowing who's going to win given how slow we are at counting our votes.
You don't have to be a political geek, an American political geek, to know the name of Nate Silver. He is a big name in American political punditry, a big number cruncher, an analyst of the polling. He doesn't do the website FiveThirtyEight anymore, if you know that website, but he does put out the regular Silver Bulletin on his Substack. It looks at the data as it comes in on the 2024 presidential race. There's lots of it coming in, always absorbing. In the background, a few years back, though, Nate Silver wasn't into politics. He was a professional poker player. Now he's published a new book which looks into risk and those who take risks. It's called On the Edge, and Nate Silver is here with me now. Welcome to you, Nate.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming in. Tell me about the guiding thought of your new book then, which is about risk and understanding risk and the people who take risks. A key to understanding the economy, politics, the world generally.
Yeah, if you look at the people who are dominating the economy increasingly, it's in tech and finance, and they have the skill set that I call the Riverian skill set. River is a poker term. It means on the one hand, they're very analytical, they like numbers, they like data, but they're also very competitive. They can be contrarian, they're very individualistic, and just seeing the same pattern of a certain type of nerd over and over again throughout my travels to this metaphorical place. And I'm one of these people, I guess, myself, right? Yeah. I feel very at home in the poker world more than in the politics world, but we have certain things in common.
Right. And we just wanted to explore that thought, which is, I know, central to your book. I haven't read your book, to be perfectly honest. It's on my list, Nate.
Yeah.
But your thought about the Riverians, the river folk, and the villagers, you divide people broadly into those categories. Just explain that to us.
Yeah, the village is more the establishment, right? So in the United States, it might be Harvard and the New York Times, East Coast, progressive, elite, kind of old money. Here, I mean, the UK is probably mostly in that village category. It's a very literate population, but it's a little bit more conservative in terms of taking risk, right? There's a little bit more paternalism in the UK. Last night I was thinking, maybe I'll go buy a beer, right, at the store, and the stores are all closed by 11, right? You're in the back seat of your Uber, and the alarm dings if your seatbelt's not buckled up, right? It's a different environment in the US where people are very, very, very individualistic, especially on the West Coast, where people move off from all around the world to Silicon Valley to found companies that might change the world or might wind up making them bankrupt.
All right, let's before we get more into your thinking now, as expressed in your book and generally in your Substack too, you were a professional poker player.
Yeah.
Were you good at it? Were you making a lot of money?
What matters in poker is, are you good relative to the people you're playing against?
Sure.
And at that time, there was a poker bubble, I would call it. So it was good relative to my competition. In an absolute sense, I'm pretty good. I'm not elite world class, but I play poker pretty seriously.
Okay. And does that mean you got rich doing it? Did you make a stack of money?
I made a little bit of money to parlay into other things where they made more money.
It sounds like
it's a hard way. The saying is, it's a hard way to make an easy living.
Yeah.
There's a lot of luck in poker in the short run.
All right, so you must have done pretty well to be able to invest the money that you were making as a
pretty well as a 20-something to be able to play a video game basically. Right. Online poker and make money was liberating for sure.
Right. I know you were operating on the online poker circuit. Now look, and then you took a turn into political analysis and analyzing poll data and so on. Why did that happen?
Partly because the American Congress passed a law that banned internet poker, so I became more interested in politics. Partly I was living in Chicago. I'd gone to the University of Chicago, and Barack Obama was this candidate who was very inspirational, and partly because I thought media coverage of politics was lacking. Mm-hmm. It was very based on feelings and vibes and arbitrary things, and this is an era where the movie Moneyball comes out in the United States. It's all about data-driven analysis, and so it was kind of applying that concept to politics.
Okay, so applying hard analysis, but overlaying that on a sort of instinctual understanding of people. I mean, you believe that polling analysis has to be hard-edged and based on good maths and understanding, but it also has to be tempered by an understanding of human nature.
I mean, it maybe becomes more in poker than in polling, I think. But yeah, look, when you're analyzing political trends, you have to, we exist in the world. There's context in the world. We have to understand where that's coming from, right? The fact that in the U.S. now things are so incredibly polarized and partisan, that 92% of people have made up their minds already who they're going to vote for. You don't have the big swings like you have here. Like, that's a relevant context when you're building a model, for example.
So tell me then, Nate, why were you, and just about every other pollster, why were you blindsided in 2016 by Donald Trump winning?
If you had read my blog then, 538, you would not have been surprised that Trump won. We gave him a 30% chance, which is much higher than the market did or the punters did or other people did. And so I think that's kind of a myth. I think that was a case where people were ignoring polling showing tight races in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, for example, and apply too much of their groupthink, their vibes-based analysis, and then blame the pollsters for it later. If you actually go back, or Brexit's an even better example. There were lots and lots and lots of polls showing Leave winning. It was a photo finish, 50-50, 51-49, one way or the other. But people in London thought, no, I think we can imagine this happening, and so it's called unthinkability bias.
Right. Is it still true then that the opinion polls tend to underprice Donald Trump? Is that right?
So they have 2 times out of 2. The problem with 2 times out of 2 is not a large sample size. Look, in the U.S., people are increasingly outspoken about their support for Donald Trump. You know, people in what I call the river, like Elon Musk now, are openly pro-Trump, for example. They're wearing hats around and having yard signs and things like that. Look, I think it's a risk. The good thing is that, I'm not a pollster, but I know people in the industry. They're very aware that they messed up in 2016 and 2020. And usually people self-correct or sometimes overcorrect when they make a mistake. You've seen in England for a long time, Tories were underestimated and people have tried to correct for that with new methods. Look, the old school method of just dialing somebody in the phone book at random doesn't work very well anymore. Most people don't pick up their phone call if a stranger calls, but they're trying new techniques, more modeling, more data massaging. It was pretty good in the American midterm in 2022, but we'll see about 2024.
Right, and maybe an area where pure maths intersects with understanding of human nature and character. Is there such a thing as a shy Trumper? People who actually do support him but wouldn't say so, and then go down to the polling station, fill in the ballot paper for Trump, even though you wouldn't know that they were Trump. Is that significant? Do they exist?
The Trump voters I know are not very shy. Maybe the opposite, in fact.
But in the margin, I wonder.
The issue is more that it's hard to get certain types of voters on the phone. People who don't trust the establishment are more likely to vote Republican and less likely to pick up a pollster's phone call. So you can do things. You can ask people, who'd you vote for last time, to balance your sample that way, or which party you registered with to balance your sample that way. But the fact is that you're not equally likely to reach everybody. And in the U.S., we're very polarized along social trust and educational lines, where if you're a high establishment trust, college-educated person, you're a Democrat. If you're low social trust, maybe did not complete college, then you're probably a Republican. That's been difficult for pollsters to deal with.
Right, take us into the analysis in your new book then. I mean, your analogies about the river dwellers and the villages and so on. Do you still you believe? Do you still have an edge over the rest of the pollsters out there?
I think edges are harder to find than ever. For better or worse, the capitalist economy is very efficient at giving rewards to people who find edges. I think increasingly edges might be in knowing when a model is wrong, for example. But look, we've put lots and lots of effort into our product over the years. Actually, an election model is a tough thing to do. It's a mathematically pretty challenging problem. So you might have new entrants in the market who don't have the track record that we do. But for sure, any gambler knows that any edge doesn't last for long. Competition catches up.
Yeah. But I'm inviting you really to bang your own drum here. Do you believe, as things stand, you've maybe got to march on some of the other pollsters making their projections now?
I think we're the only pollster that has a long-term track record doing this. And so I'd say, and we're very transparent. One of the things about having this newsletter is I'm going to walk you through every detail of the model. I think if you can't explain a model, I worry that you don't know what you're doing. There are more bad models out there than good models.
Right, I tend to ask, I know you're not a pollster, you're a poll analyst, but I ask this question over and over again, even though it's completely unfair. Do you think that Harris and Waltz can seal the deal, and do you think that they will?
Look, if I were betting at Ladbrokes or something where it's 50-50, I wouldn't make a bet because they would take a tax on the bet and it wouldn't be worth the tax. I think it's about as close as you can get to 50-50. And also Americans have to get used to the fact that it's going to be close probably on election day too. You're going to have to get used to the fact that you're going to wake up on November 5th not knowing who's going to win, and you might wake up on November 6th still not knowing who's going to win given how slow we are at counting our votes.
Oh, it is tight. No, it's still a great pleasure to have you, and thank you for sharing your insights.
Absolutely, thank you.
And your book is out now, On the Edge, the thoughts and the writings of a renowned analyst of the numbers. Coming up in just a minute, more here on Times Radio. I'll get you up to date with the news in the House of Commons, that arms ban on Israel.
on DAB digital radio, on the Times Radio app, and on your smart speaker. News from every angle. Times Radio.